Did you know that the human male foreskin performs over 16 unique functions, most notably which it is a natural lubricant, providing gliding and rolling action, making sex much more comfortable and convenient for both him and his partner. It also contains over 10,000 specialized nerve endings, making sex much more pleasurable and satisfying for both him and his partner. And the prepuce, prepuce is a protective covering of your glands, just like your eyelid covers your eye. So it prevents the glands from getting less sensitive over time. Now, the movement I want to bring to you today is known as Intactivism. Is a civil rights movement started by a bunch of men who were circumcised as infants, so they didn't get a choice whether they wanted their bodies to be permanently altered or not. So now they're trying to regrow their foreskins. There are many stretching devices you can buy on the internet, or some people opt for surgery, like skin grafting does restore the prepuce. Of course, a man-made prepuce is never quite as good as the one you're born with, so would have been a lot quicker and cheaper just to not force cosmetic amputation onto an infant in the first place. So now those men are campaigning to have a routine infant genital mutilation recognized for what it is, a very serious human rights violation. Now, I'm well aware that some religious or cultural groups, such as Judaism and Islam, recognize circumcision as a necessary rite of passage for men to enter covenant with God. But what I have to say to that is, after having done my own research, I've discovered that the original form of circumcision, which was performed by Abraham prior to 500 AD during the Old Testament, actually all that was a very small, non-invasive little prick on the prepuce, designed to draw just a single drop of blood. And of course, that would heal and you still have a healthy, fully functional foreskin, but apparently, over the centuries, circumcision has become so much more distorted, or had things added to it by outside groups, that the modern form of circumcision, which is commonly performed by doctors, rabbis, and moyals, is completely eliminating an entire sensory organ. And I'm pretty sure the modern form of circumcision, which is performed by doctors, rabbis, and moyals, it's not modeled after the one performed by Abraham during the Old Testament. It's modeled after the circumcision, which was performed by Egyptian slave owners as a way to psychologically dominate their slaves. After all, if God is all-powerful, why would humans be consistently born with a body part we're just supposed to chop off right after birth? That doesn't really make sense. I mean, if he is a divine creator, I guess that's sort of offensive to the creator, like body modification. That's like saying, hey, you made a mistake. I mean, the Old Testament was written a long time ago when the world was very different. Like back then, they didn't have indoor plumbing, they couldn't take showers, so I'm pretty sure over centuries there must have been some things that were just mistranslated, misinterpreted, exaggerated, or aren't relevant anymore in the 21st century. I gather that all world religions have one thing in common. They're about promoting nonviolence and spreading peace and kindness to others, but taking an actual weapon to the most sensitive part of a person's body and causing them to lose substantial amounts of blood and scream in pain, and leaving them horribly disfigured with a permanent body modification, which was not of their choosing, that sounds pretty violent to me. The Torah does strictly prohibit the practice of alteration of the human body, so pretty sure circumcision, that's a very severe, invasive, permanent body modification. So, I don't know, it doesn't sound like it's according to the Torah or whatever. Now, if we say we want to live in a civilized, rational society without things like anti-Semitism or sexism, routine angel mutilation just doesn't sound like something civilized or rational people do. So yeah, actually, us practicing circumcision does encourage anti-Semitism. Like, everyone just thinks, oh, the Jews are those sickos who mutilate children as a, like, I don't know, blood sacrifice or God, or angry God or whatever. Now, I'm also aware that some medical institutions may claim there are potential health benefits of being circumcised, and those include and are limited to reduced risk of penile cancer, reduced risk of STDs, and reduced risk of UTIs. While it is true that amputating a piece of healthy, functional tissue does decrease one's risk of cancer, it's also true that breast cancer is far more prevalent among both men and women. So he's far more likely to die of breast cancer than to ever be diagnosed with penile cancer. But I've never heard of parents remove their child's breast tissue in order to prevent breast cancer. And you could also chop off one of your ears and have a much lower risk of an inner ear infection. Or you could just practice proper hygiene and not stick foreign objects in there. Actually, in Europe, with the lowest rate of circumcision, they also have the lowest rate of STDs and UTIs. But then in the United States, where we have the highest rate of circumcision among developed nations, we also have the highest rate of STDs and UTIs among developed nations. So whatever supposed potential health effects that may exist don't seem to be working. Now, countries where circumcision is extremely rare, if not completely illegal, because those societies have recognized circumcision for what is incredibly and extremely barbaric, backwards, antiquated, archaic, thoughtless, insensitive, disgustingly cruel, incredibly harmful, very serious human rights violation that should only ever be resorted to in the most extreme, absolute medical necessities, with a prior diagnosis, of course, with the patient's well-informed consent, of course, and the most extreme, absolute medical necessities, where and the complete absence of less invasive alternative treatments. Those countries include, but are not limited to, China, India, Japan, Thailand, Hong Kong, Russia, Ukraine, all of Scandinavia, Belgium, Bulgaria, Romania, Poland, Czech Republic, Austria, Hungary, Greece, Italy, Luxembourg, Liechtenstein, France, Germany, and the United Kingdom. Now, developed nations where the majority of the populace are still under this false, archaic, very dangerous belief that forcing children to undergo ancient Egyptian torture methods is somehow accomplishing something other than just completely psychologically, physically, and emotionally traumatizing the victim for life. Those countries include, and are limited to, the United States, Israel, and South Korea. And South Korea, by the way, they only hopped on this bandwagon of absolute lunacy during the Korean War when the U.S. military spread hearsay. So an honest doctor will tell you that while there may be some supposed potential health benefits of circumcision, maybe, well, actually, no, there aren't. They're all completely made up by the medical industry to try to justify their sexual assault of infants and keep this multi-million-dollar industry rolling. An honest doctor will tell you that the risks or consequences of circumcision include, but are not limited to, redness, irritation. Yeah, some men are actually kept in constant pain after this. Incredibly harmful, disgusting, cruel, completely unnecessary. Sorry excuse for a medical procedure. There's also a risk of hemorrhaging, skin tags, dryness, chafing, excessive blood loss. Actually, 1 out of every 77 infants does end up dying from this completely cosmetic procedure. So just from that alone, like the fact that there are actually people dying from this, or people losing their newborn sons, that should be enough of a reason to just stop it. That's like, wow, I mean, we don't do foot binding anymore, but this sounds really, really bad. There's also the consequence of scar formation, reduced sensitivity. Actually, men who are circumcised as adults say there's always about a 95% loss of sensitivity. So it is an attack on his sexuality and the sexuality of all his future partners. And then last but not least, another consequence is mental illness. And if you're wondering how circumcision causes mental illness, well, just imagine you wake up one day and your 4 limbs are all held down with restraints. There's a gag in your mouth, so you can't talk, and your genitals are exposed, and some strange person who you've never seen before comes at you with a sharp object. Wouldn't that be pretty scary, pretty traumatic? And a lot of times the victim actually goes into shock from the blood loss, or they passed out from blood loss. So shock is a very severe, harsh mental state that only the most very few unfortunate members of humanity ever have to experience the most traumatic events of life. So, wow, forcing all that completely unnecessary pain and suffering onto an infant, if that isn't diabolical, I don't know what is. Now, I hope this presentation has made you think more about how your decisions can have an impact on the lives of others, and I hope that now you will consider abolishing this absolute insanity known as routine infant genital mutilation. Thank you.